The next thing that we're going to talk about is the due diligence process that HJH Investments goes through on each and every property that we acquire. Now, if you watched the last video, you noted that we've got this under contract, and now it's my job to figure out why they were so motivated to sell it. And there are lots of good reasons why people are motivated to sell a property. Mom and dad were in real estate. They never saw mom and dad, and they just don't want to have anything to do with it. Give me my money because mom and dad have passed now. We may have a fund that has a set period of time that they have to sell a property within, and they have to do it, and if they don't do it, they're not doing what their fund said. We may have a developer who's bought something in the downturn that has developed something out over a period of 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and now it's something that's absorbable, that's a stabilized investment. Well, that developer may not want to wait for the absolute top dollar on that property because, after all, they're developers and that's what they're good at. If they bought it at 20 cents on the dollar, if they can sell it at 75 to 80 cents on the dollar, that's a good profit margin for them, and they're ready to take their money off the table and go do something else. And what they brought has such great benefits that it makes a lot of sense for a group like ours to come in and buy it at 20 and 25 cents off of what the purchase price should be. So we have it under contract now. We're figuring out what their motivation was if we don't already know it. And we're going to uncover if there are any other red flags that are there. Within 3 days, 3 business days of us being under contract, I'm going to take their due diligence material and do the following things. The leases. It's very important that we scrub the leases in their entirety and understand all the little details of the leases of the tenants that are in place. Within our organization, I have an individual by the name of John Potoshnik. We'll just call him John Pot here because that's what we call him here. He is my I-Dotter, T-crosser, very high detailed individual. He's my director of operations. He is going to review in detail the entirety of the leases. Simultaneously as that's going on, David Crockett, yes, the Davy Crockett, who is our real estate attorney, is going to review those leases as well. They will then compare notes with one another as to what they've come up with to verify that they are indeed seeing the same things. And if there are any challenges with them, they're going to report those back to me so that I can take that and communicate with the seller's agent, etc., as necessary to get more detail from those. Now, I'll admit, when we started this, my wife Hillary and I, as we were putting things under contract, would literally do the same process, sitting in bed with one another, where we both would have a copy of the lease. We'd read through, make notes for one another, and exchange so that we could make sure we were thorough as possible for the investors we had at that time. As we've grown, we've been able to hire fantastic people within our organization who are great at what they do to do those things, and they simply go through that process and then report those back to me. So that covers the leases. The financials of the property. This guy that's the I-Dotter T-crosser, we have him do the same thing with that. So John Potoshnik is going to go through all the financials of the property as well as our head of accounting, which is Jennifer. Her last name's Pfister. We'll just put a P there. She is also going to review those and make sure in detail it is what it is. And if there are any questions that uncover, we want to get that information as soon as possible, because if these are wrong, if it's been reported to us wrong in any way and we uncover it, it saves a lot of time and money to find this out within the first 3 business days as opposed to waiting longer in the process. Typically, when we put property under contract, we have a 60-day due diligence process. That's an inspection period. During that period of time, we can cancel our contract for any reason or no reason and have earnest money returned. And then after our due diligence period is over, then we've got 30 days to close on the property. So the whole process I'm getting ready to go through, we have to accomplish a great amount of things in a 90-day period of time. So let's start right away. First 3 business days, we're going to scrub all the information and due diligence that we can garner and then ask additional questions. Once we realize it is what it is, and if indeed is what it is, then I'm going to set an appointment to go out on site myself to see that property, and I will be on site within 2 weeks to do a site visit. At that site visit, I will be there. Tim Selnick, this is a new name. He's our Managing Director of Property Management and Leasing. He has been doing what he's been doing, and we'll introduce him in another segment, for the last 25 years. Great deal of knowledge, etc. I'm going to bring him on site with me because I want his eyeballs and his attention to detail that he has when he goes. Also on that visit, we'll have Ben Kogut. Ben Kogut works with our investors, is a partner of mine that works with our investors, and we'll introduce him in another segment as well, who helps with investor relations and helps raise the capital that we need in order to go acquire these properties. So we're going to make a site visit there. When we get on site, we're going to be looking for the following things. If it's retail buildings, which we do, if it's industrial, or if it's office, we've had different things that we're looking for. Retail, I want to know what the store sales. I'm going to go meet with the manager. Both Tim and I have a great deal of experience of building great relationships in a very short period of time, which is extremely beneficial when you're speaking to a manager of a Dollar General and you're trying to get information that they may or may not want to disclose to you easily. So we'll build a strong relationship in a short period of time, have a good time with them, until such point in time as it's a comfortable point to ask them, how they're doing on a weekly basis, monthly basis, annual basis. And oftentimes by the time that Tim or I are done with them, they will walk us into their office and literally show us the sales on the walls. So I want to find that out for the following reason, because it could be the reason why there's motivation for the seller to sell it. So I'll give you an example. Here in my hometown in Wichita, Kansas, I put a property on the west side of Wichita that had a Dollar General as one of its tenants. Dollar General sales typically need to be at least $800,000 for them to feel some level of profit and want to be there. I know this because we've looked at a great deal of Dollar Generals over the years. If they're at $1 million or more, they're likely to stay in that location. If they're over $2 million, they may be looking at expanding and getting into a bigger location. So understanding where they're at in that process is very important. Well, I walked into that Dollar General, I talked to the manager. The manager told me that they were only doing $400,000 in sales and that their site would be much better suited across the street where the traffic went by in larger numbers. Well, that was an easy decision. I am looking for a reason to not buy this property at this point. My job, again, is to protect investor capital. And if I know that that tenant is going to leave at the end of their term or is very likely to leave, there is no way that I want to bring other people's capital into that building. So I called the agent. I said, how much information do you really want to know? And here's why we're terminating the contract. Very easy for us to go do. So we'll do this with each one of the tenants. If it's a single tenant deal, that's easy. That's a single set of conversations with one person. Or we'll go, if it's a multi-tenant deal, and meet with all the retail tenants and get a feel for where each person is at or each company is at. On office space, I'm looking for things like how much of the space are they using? We're going to talk to the managers and see how their business model is going. We're going to do research to find out how their business is going, see if there are any bad articles going on out there in the press about something going wrong with the company. But I want to see how much they're using. If they're using 80–90% of the space, odds are that they're not going to want to expand dramatically unless they have a significant event happen. If they're using 40% of the space, odds are that they're not going to need that much space unless, again, there's an event that has happened that's going to cause them to need more. And so I want to note that. If they're busting at the seams, there are people crawling all over one another, that's also a problem unless I have vacant space for them to move into. And so in any of those circumstances, those are going to be red flags for me that are going to make me reconsider buying that property. Looking at industrial space, I want to see stuff moving. I want to see stuff in inventory and moving out of inventory. Unless it's a distribution hub like we own FedEx location, in that case, probably not going to see anything during the day. So we'll need to show up early in the morning and watch all the trucks come in and all of them go out, and then talk to the manager too about how much of their capacity they're using right now and what he sees for the future or she sees for the future there as well. So covered all three of those segments because they are different, but the key to all of them is being able to create a great conversation with the person that's on site, and then also the corporate level to see what additional information you can get. So we're going to do our on-site visit. We're now met with the managers. We've seen the property. We've sat in the parking lot. We've stared and watched activity for a great deal of time. At least a day, sometimes more than a day, especially if we have any concerns about traffic levels. If that is what it is as well, I'm also going to go visit the county and the city and talk to the Planning Commission. I'm going to talk to zoning. I want to know if something new is coming to that area that might improve what I have. I also, more importantly, want to know if they're going to develop the exact same thing 2 miles away and going to pull all of my tenant structure into those locations. So again, I'm looking for reasons, red flags, any red flag that tells me don't do this deal so that I can squash it right then and there and move on to something that I can protect investors' capital in. So I go to the city, go to the county, make sure there are no violations. If there are repeated violations, what are those? Is there trash issues on a regular basis? And now I'm going to go talk to lenders. Commercial lenders are a great resource in an area to give you a pulse on what's going on in a city. A question I often get is how do you know about the individual cities that you're going into? Well, because we go to them and we go and get the pulse from the people that we think have the most amount of info. I also have a tremendous network of real estate brokers across the country that I've built relationships with over the last 10 years that I've been a commercial broker, and you can find out more about me in another segment as well in my history there. I've got a broad network across the country, and I literally travel to locations on a monthly basis to meet with brokers in different parts of the country so I can maintain that base of wisdom that I can rely on as we put something under contract. So I'm going to meet with the lenders, not only to find out what's going on, but I'm going to need a loan at some point in time on this property because of the way that we do business. And so I'm going to find out whether or not we're compatible, whether or not that they have an interest in making a loan on the property. That's the site visit. We're there, we've seen it. It absolutely is what it is. This is a fantastic moment because we're pretty sure at this point that we found a deal. The roof isn't raining on us on the inside, and we can't see the sky through the roof or anything like that. We don't see too much deferred maintenance. Deferred maintenance is when we need to fix something hasn't been fixed yet, they've put it off to the side, and it really does need to be fixed. We don't see a tremendous amount of deferred maintenance just in a visual setting. Then we'll move to the next stage. We'll say, okay, it is what it is. And now we'll really start spending some money. So let's move to the next stage of the due diligence process. We've now had our site visit. We've reviewed all of the leases. We've reviewed all the financials on the property. It is what it is. So we've decided this is a great deal. We'd like to proceed with it. Now we're going to order inspections on the property. So we get the following inspections done on every property. One, we hire a company called AEI. They're a national company that will come in and do a full-blown property inspection. In that property inspection, they are going to look at everything from the structure, the HVAC units, the parking lot, the roof. They're going to provide me with typically a 90 to 120 page report that shows me absolutely everything that they see as something I'm going to need to do over the next 12 years of owning this property. That's very good because it gives me the ability to plan to protect people's money. And if there is anything that needs to be done right now or anything in the next 3 years that needs to be done, I'm going to go back to the seller and I'm going to talk to the seller and ask them to take care of that for us, because after all, I am buying a cap rate and a return for my investors. I don't want to buy somebody's problem. I love boring when it comes to investments. My life is exciting enough. boring on the investment level makes things so much better for the investors and everyone that's involved in a transaction. So, do a property inspection. We're also going to have an environmental report done. They're going to look at the history of the property, any environmental problems that may have happened. This is very important. We always hire a different company, and I'm going to tell you a little ditty right now of something that actually did happen. So if you look up here in number 10, and by the way, this is everything that we've acquired to date as of 2/28 of 19 that we've acquired. Number 10 here, this is the 10th property that we acquired. We acquired it on 12/8 of 2015. It was a Family Dollar that was in Detroit, Michigan. Well, we went to the Family Dollar, it was 2 years old. We went to go see our lender, and we conveniently had an environmental inspection that was done by Family Dollar. The lender said, we will accept that. I said, you know what, I've got investor capital that's going into this deal. I need to make sure that I protect that, so I'm going to hire a different company to just check the work of the first company and make sure it's correct. Well, lo and behold, the second company goes in, and underneath my Family Dollar, they found a heating oil tank that was sitting under the corner of the building. Well, that's a problem, right? That heating oil tank was put in the 1950s. Who knows what was in it? Who knows what type of contamination? Now, had I not done that inspection and I purchased this property and I looked to sell it down the road, the new buyer would have done an inspection on the property and would have found that, and it would have been the responsibility of myself and my investors to fix the problem that was there, okay? By doing an inspection, the previous environmental company got to fix the problem that was there, and they went out and had it removed and verified that there weren't any future problems with the property. This is why it's very important to get an environmental inspection and to get a new company to do it so that you can double check the work that somebody else may have done. Again, my responsibility is to protect investor capital, and while we all make mistakes in life, I thank God that that was not one of the mistakes that I made, that we actually went in and did the extra inspection that wasn't necessary in order to get our loan. And then I'm also going to get a survey on the property. A survey can unearth all sorts of things. There could have been changes to the property. We could not have rights to enter the property because of the way that things have set up. There could have been a lease for the entrance to your property that you got to pay somebody else. There's lots of details in that. By getting a survey, it clears everything out and you know exactly what's there. And we'll also do title work. We'll order title work, and that works hand in hand with the survey in a lot of cases, looking back and forth between those two items to make sure that there aren't any hidden challenges that are going to be with the property. So these inspections, all totaled, typically cost anywhere between $7,000 and $15,000 for us to go in and do. And one of the reasons why we wait to spend that capital until we've done the on-site inspection and looked at the leases and looked at the financials is that we want to make sure that when we spend that capital, we're pretty darn sure that we like this property and that we're going to go buy it. If any of these things turn up and create issues with the property, we want to make sure, if you saw in the previous one, we've got 60 days of due diligence and 30 days to close. I want to make sure that I can do that in that time period and that I have that so that if I need to terminate the contract, I could do it without losing any earnest money we may have put down on the property. So that's a list of the things that we go and get inspections on. So let's take a look at a timeline next. First 3 days, we're going to look at the due diligence materials. That includes the leases and the financials. Within 2 weeks, we're going to have our site visit. The inspections that I just went through typically take 3 to 4 weeks for us to get our reports back from that. So we're going to be 3 to 4 weeks. And these are our inspections. During this same period of time, I'm also meeting and talking to lenders. I may engage a mortgage broker as well to help us find the right loan for this property. And that process typically takes anywhere from 3 to 8 weeks from start to finish to get done. So I'm going to start this at that same point. So we may be as far as 8 weeks to get our mortgage in place. So we're going to get offers from several different banks. We're going to find the best case scenario and the best match. That may not be the lowest payment. It may be a slightly higher payment with a longer term so that we know that we've got a long period of time before we have to refinance the property. We're going to look at the best combination of benefits to pick the right loan for the property that we're working with. Okay, so I've got a total of 8 weeks before I have my mortgage done. And usually we're 6 to 8 weeks in. Well, if you do the math, 8 weeks is about 2 months, which is about 60 days. So about the time that we're getting the mortgage done, just now I'm able to tell an investor that I'm going to go out to what I can give them in terms of a return. And we'll go through some of that information here in a few. But I have to go through all of this before I can even bring it to an investor and say, hey, I really have a great deal here, and here is what I can give to you by partnering with me to acquire and partnering with HJH Investments to acquire this property. So that's the entirety of the period of time. Again, anytime during this process we find something that we don't like or we find something significant enough that make this not a good deal anymore, we can terminate through this period. Once I hit this 60-day due diligence is over with and we've negotiated any inspection challenges that we see in the next 3 years, deferred maintenance that we need to get a credit for, once that is done, our earnest money will go hard. And by going hard, that means it becomes non-refundable. So I want to make sure before we put even more money at risk that we have all of this done and that it really is what it is. Because if I'm going to protect investor capital, it really has to be that way.